In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to create a loop, a repeat loop in Scratch, but we're also going to learn how to nest another loop inside of that loop. And nesting means putting one loop inside of the other loop. So kind of like those matryoshka dolls that you have. So let me show you what a matryoshka doll. A matryoshka doll. This is one of those things where you have a large doll, right? And then when you can open up the doll, and then inside the doll is a smaller doll, and inside that doll, when you open up, is an even smaller doll, and it goes on and on and on like that. And you can do the same thing with loops inside of Scratch, which means that you can repeat something. Say if you want to repeat it 3 times, and then you have another nested loop, a repeat loop with 2, you're going to repeat that 3 times 2, so you're going to repeat that a total of 6 times, right? So if you had a repeat loop of 3 and you had another repeat loop inside of that of 5, well, you would be repeating it 3 times 5, so 15 times, right? So let's see how to do that. The first thing we need to have is we need to have a control block to activate our script, and we're just going to use the flag, the green flag block in this case. And but before we even get started on writing the rest of the script, let's change our costume. So we're going to delete one of them, and this one, we're going to edit that one, and we are going to remove our Scratch Cat here and delete that one, and we're going to create a small square. And the way you can make a square, a perfect square instead of a rectangle, is by holding down the Shift key as you drag across the screen. So so let's see how you do that. You see, so now I'm doing that. So I'm just going to make a very small square here, and then I'm going to click OK. And now what I want to do is I want to start off by positioning this square somewhere up here. So let's go back to the script, and let's use a motion block, and we're just going to use the motion block go to XY in our XY coordinates system. So remember, this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, right? So if I want it to start off somewhere up here, I'm going to have to move it backwards in the x dimension. So that means I have to use a negative number. I have to go, because the 0, 0, the origin, the start point, is right in the center of the stage, about here, right? So this is 0, 0. So if I want it to be on this side of the x-axis, I have to use a negative number. So that's what I'm going to start off by doing. So I'm going to make that negative 100. And I want it to be up here on the y axis. So that's, of course, moving upwards is a positive number. So if I was moving it further down, it would be a negative number, but up here is going to be a positive number. So I'm just going to set it to, say, 150. So now if I run that, you see that's where it gets positioned. And this is where I'm going to start off making my very regular pattern of a certain number of rows and a certain number of columns. But we're not actually going to start off there, because before we actually make an imprint of this using the stamp block, we're going to start off by moving it. But we first need a repeat loop, and we're going to put it right there, attach it underneath, and we're only going to repeat it 4 times to start off with. So once I've added that, I need to actually use another motion block to move it in the y direction, and I want it to move it down. I want it to move downwards, so I'm going to have to subtract from the y position. I'm going to change y by, and here I need a negative number since I need to subtract. So I'm going to subtract by, let's say, 30. So negative 30. That means that my next value for y is going to be 150 minus 30. So it's going to be 120. And once I've done that, I want to leave an imprint of it using the stamp block, right? And every time I repeat this, I am going to subtract 30 from the y position. So if I run this, you'll see what happens, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times, that's what I did. So 4 times. But to make sure, if I run this again now, you're going to see here it does exactly, it always leaves this imprint, right? So, but if I, let's see, you see those are imprints, right? So I can run this as many times as I want to, and it's always going to just leave this 1, 2, 3, 4 imprints, right? So now we're going to do this matryoshka thing, right? So to do that matryoshka thing, we are going to nest another loop inside the repeat loop. So let's go back to the repeat loops, and let's put one right in there, and I'm going to put it right there. And the reason I left this change y by is because when I repeat the loop, I want it to go 1, 2, 3, 4 downwards, right? But in this repeat loop, I'm going to want it to move over in the x direction. So I'm just going to move it over 2 in this case. That means I'm going to have 4 rows and 2 columns. Okay, so now it's not the y I want to change inside of this nested loop, it's the x position, right? So I want to move it in this direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a positive number. So let's go to the motion box and find a change x by, and if I put it right in there, let's change it by exactly the same amount that we changed y. So I'm going to change it by 30. So that means my next position is going to be minus 100 plus 30. So it's going to be, the next position is going to be negative 70, right? So, and every time it gets repeated, it's going to subtract, sorry, I mean add another 30. So it's going to be, first time it repeats, it's going to be minus 100 plus 30, so it's going to be negative 70, and then it's going to be negative 70 plus 30. So there, it's going to go on and on like that, depending on how many repeat loops we have, right? So let's just see what happens in this case. So now we activate the script, and there you go. Right? Ooh, wait a minute. So those imprints were still left there, but it moved in this direction. So to make sure that we start off with a completely clean slate, let's go to the pen tool and use the clear at the very beginning. So that means every time we press the green flag, it clears the entire screen, and we start all over again with our stamp tool. So let's try that again. So there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. We have 4 rows, and we have, well, we have 1, 2, 3. Well, we have 1, 2. We have 2 columns, but they're not aligned properly. So to make sure that they're aligned, we have to reset the X position to be exactly the same every time we go downward. So to do that, we need to use another motion control, and we're going to set X to, and we're going to set X to, and we're going to, in this case, use set X to Well, let's do it exactly the same we have up here. So negative, this is where we start off. So every time we go down one, we want it to go back to negative 100 on the x-axis. So let's try that again and see. Oh, there you go. Okay. So let's say that we wanted to have 3 columns instead. Well, then what would we do? Inside of this smaller matryoshka doll, inside of this nested repeat loop, we would then increase the number there. So if we increase that to 3, then you'll see we'll have 1, 2, 3 columns, right? And we can make as many as we want to. We could make up to 8 columns, right? So there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns, and still 4 rows, right? So the rows are here. Now, let's say that we want to have 8 rows and 8 columns. Well, we would set this to 8. And then let's repeat. Let's run the script. And there you go. 8 columns. And there you go. 8 rows. And there it is. And that's how you nest a repeat loop inside another repeat loop. And you can create all kinds of complicated patterns this way, right? So, for example, if we took this, let's see what happens when we remove this set x2. So we don't reset x every time. Well, then we're going to get this diagonal thing that goes off towards the side like that. So you see, right? Well, it's becomes kind of strange, but anyways, so we could change x by less, and that would of course make them much closer together. So let's say we do that 20, right? So now it's resetting itself 20. We could even change the y by 20, negative 20 as well, and they'll get even closer together, right? So that's how you nest loops in Scratch.